Hi, everyone. This is Professor Alex. I am here with Tucker for moral support. But hi, I just wanted to check in and I just posted the instructions and directions for the final project. So the instructions are detailed in the submission link. So if you're cool with just reading instructions, go ahead and do that. If you like things explained to you like I do, then I'm here to do that. So I wanted to just talk about what we have for our final project. I will say that the instructions seem a bit intimidating, but it's largely because people like things explained out to them. But let's go through it. So largely, well, submission details, right? This will be due April 18th, 11:59 p.m., and it's worth 100 points. This is your final project, so I expect much of you. Um, I do want everything submitted in a PDF. So your infographic should be a PDF, your write-up should be a PDF, and I also expect a PDF submission of the research that you were basing your project on. I do not accept Google Slides, Google Docs, Google whatever. I don't want a link. I need it to be submitted as a PDF. I don't want to be requesting access and all of that. So please just submit everything as a PDF. You should be able to go to File from Google or Word and click Save as PDF. So be sure to do that. As an overview, I really just want you to choose a social justice issue or some sort of like social inequality that you personally are interested in, that hopefully you gain some insight into during the semester, right? Whether that was a project or reading in the textbook. Of course, I want you to refer to that. So I want you to choose a issue, a focus that you're interested in. And what I'm gonna have you do is create an infographic. Okay, and by that I mean, like, think about when you're scrolling through Instagram and people kind of have those infographics about certain issues, and you can kind of like slide through it to get more information. And of course, they explain it very clearly and concisely, right? They make it digestible, they make it understandable for the general public so that we can all get hip to whatever's going on. Usually, also in these infographics, usually kind of like the last slide is some other resources. And that can be, you'll see the research that you based your whole project on, but it should also include resources that people in PG can use. So, for example, if you're looking at like, I don't know, hunger, your research is probably going to be on hunger in general in the US. But then when you provide resources, they should be usable for people in PG. So, for example, your research paper can be on hunger in the US, but I want you to also include resources that people in PG can use. So, that might be places that you can go and donate food, or that might be places where you can go pick up food, right? On both ends. So, I want a cute, clear, aesthetic infographic because I do plan to post these, and I hope that you can post yours as well. So, the first step really is to go into, well, okay, let's go through the steps, right? First step, determine your social issue. Should be something covered in the textbook at some point in the semester. You can choose whatever you want. Second step is to go into the PGCC library sociology database. If you click on this, it brings you straight to the sociology database, and you can kind of do some research in here. You must check off peer reviewed. It needs to be a peer reviewed paper. What that means is that in research, essentially, it's kind of funny. There's these things called like predatory journals. And so predatory journals are journals that you can just kind of pay and be published in, right? So they're like, oh, if you pay us $1,000, we'll publish your research. But that doesn't mean that it's peer reviewed. Peer reviewed means that when we have quality research, let's say I'm doing a research on hunger inequality in PGCC and I want to publish that to a journal, peer reviewed means that I have typically three anonymous reviewers who review my paper and they provide comments and suggestions and questions and ways that I need to improve or clarify. And then I need to kind of resubmit the paper. And then sometimes those peer reviewers give comments again. And then you have to revise and submit again. And that might happen a few times. So peer reviewed means that you have like uh, quite literally peers. Like, so for example, it might be people with PhDs in sociology who are reviewing my paper and providing feedback, and I need to kind of continue to make edits until they find that the paper is acceptable. So peer reviewed quite literally means like, yeah, a publication in which articles go through an official editorial process that involves review and approval by the author's peers, who are people who are experts in that subject matter. So do be sure to click off peer reviewed. Full text would also probably be helpful so you don't kind of hit a paywall. So I would check off both of those if I were you. Then within that paper that you choose, identify the questions that they're asking. Like, what is the main research question? Then I want you to identify two key findings. This is usually found in the discussion or conclusion section. Like, what did they conclude? What did they find? What was important, right? That might be a recommendation, that might be a new discovery, it might be something that kind of solidifies existing information, but what were the key findings? I then want you to go in and look at key statistics or trends. Like this is usually in the results section. And this can be quantitative or qualitative. So quantitative is numerically based and qualitative is usually kind of based on like interviews, for example, or observation. All of these things are valid results or statistics, right? So give me something numerical or based off of interviews that was found to be important in this research. Then because it's an infographic, I want you to simplify the key findings and the key results, right? Again, think about the infographics that you see online and how they kind of simplify everything to make it digestible and understandable to the general public. Make it clear, make it easy to understand for general people in PG. Of course, then I want you to create an original infographic. So I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but you can't copy and paste somebody else's. You have to create your own, of course. I suggest using Canva, but you can use whatever you want as long as you download it as a PDF and submit it that way. Of course, include your name somewhere so you have credit. The infographic should include for sure um, suggestions on how we can address your chosen social issue or inequality of focus. This can be a variety of things. This might be policy changes. This could be individual actions that we can take. This could be ways that we can contribute to our community. And this could also be ways that if we come together as a community, we can really make a big impact. Um, this part should be more so action steps regarding PG County. Again, it's going to be very hard to find research just on PG County. Probably doesn't exist. You're probably have to find research that has to do with the US in general. But then in terms of your solutions and your action steps and your recommendations, they should be actionable for people in PG. If you're not from PG, 99% of my students are, but I think I've had a couple people this semester be like, I don't live here. And if you don't, then address your own community, okay? Your infographic should include a couple links. First of all, the link to which you found your research in, and then a couple other links that provide, again, direct resources or action steps or suggestions for people in PG. If you're talking about suicide, that might be the suicide hotline, or it could even be um, something within PGCC, like, oh, if you are feeling certain, like, I don't know, depression, anxiety, these are people that you can contact at PGCC to address these things that might be able to help you out. So you can focus this towards PG County, or you can even focus this towards PGCC, like your fellow classmates. That would be really cool too. So I kind of also wrote that you should use the edit link feature, right? And I did that in here twice, here and here, right? So instead of posting the whole link, what I did was, I wonder if I can kind of almost show you. So how you do this is, so this is the sociology database. So what I did was I copied the link and then I put it here, control V paste. and then you do the enter to make it a link. And then what you do is you go onto this and you, oh, do I not know how to? Oh, it's right here, link options. Link options. And then what you do is you keep the link. But then what I did was I typed in the library sociology. So, oh my gosh, the library sociological database. And I put that in there. And then that link turns into what I put the text as. So instead of having a huge link in here, I just made it like this. And so then if you were to go and click on this, it would just bring you to the link. So I'm bringing that up because it's not aesthetic and it's not realistic to have people copy and paste your whole link, especially from an infographic, right? So turn it into a cute little hyperlink like this. To be honest, this is something that I recently learned, but y'all are younger, so maybe you know how to do this, but this was something over the past year that I learned how to do. So I don't know. So whatever, make sure that when you are including your links that you use the edit link feature where you are not posting the whole link on the infographic because again that takes up a lot of space. So try to edit it into a link that you can just kind of click on that's shorter and doesn't take up so much space in your infographic. So that's your infographic. I really just want it to be aesthetic, clear about the findings, clear about suggestions, and clear about the key findings and the key statistics, whether that is trends or data. And again, that could be like, oh, like 25% of men in PG are struggling to find food. Or we see that, like, I remember seeing something in DC, like on a billboard that said, 25% of DC students in grade school go to school hungry. So it can be something simple as that, where it's like, well, 25% of students in PG County go to school hungry, and then we charge for meals. So we are kind of perpetuating the fact that students are hungry and cannot afford getting a decent meal. And therefore, how do you focus at school, right? So simple statistics like that in terms of just kind of like numbers or whatever that kind of back up whatever your argument is. And then, so that's your infographic. And then there's also going to be a written aspect of this. It is your final project. So there is kind of two steps. So apologies, but I have faith in you all. So then I wrote in a Word document, but like, I don't know, that could be a Google document or a Word document that again, you need to file save as a PDF. Okay. So I have three questions here and I need one paragraph to address each of these main three questions. And within these questions, I kind of provide follow-up questions that hopefully can help you. I don't know, if you're not sure what to write, hopefully you can address some of these. So the first main thing is research background. So I want to know what background information you found, what was the research paper, what information and research exists, what research should be conducted. Because a lot of the time when you read research, what you'll find, and not every paper says this super clearly, but a lot of them do. They'll say suggestions for future research. And that's usually in the discussion part of the research paper where they say, here are some suggestions for future research. Because you can't address everything in one paper. You might find something as a researcher that you know needs more focus and depth in terms of research. It's not within the scope of your research paper, but you know that this should be explored going forward. So, you know, what exists, what were you able to find, what's not findable, what data, and it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I can't find numbers on that. Perfect. That's where you write about this, where you're like, oh, I had questions about this, I had questions about this, but I couldn't find research on it anywhere. I couldn't get an answer to this question. That's perfect to write about here in terms of what research should be conducted, what research doesn't exist, what research should exist, right? Like if you're Googling something and you're like, oh my God, I can't find any info on this, that's this question. Oh my gosh, I can't find any research on this. It does not exist. So therefore, there should be research that addresses the specific question or scenario or situation. So I'm getting ahead of you, but when you go to kind of grad school and you have to write a thesis, what they say over and over again, and it's so annoying, is find the gap in the literature, find the gap in the literature. And it's so annoying. But what they're saying is read the research and what questions do you still have? What research can you actually not find? What questions do you have that have not been answered? So, not that you necessarily have to answer this one, but it's a really good one if you're sitting there and you're like, wow, I have a question and I can't find anything on it. Perfect, write about that. Be like, we have this issue and there's no research on this yet, or there's nothing that addresses my specific research question. That's valid. And then kind of based on the research that you read, what solutions and recommendations already exist based on this research or other research? And then do you feel like they are realistic and effective? Because sometimes researchers provide really effective and realistic solutions, and sometimes I'm reading research and I'm like, are you for real that that's your suggestion? Like, oh, just treat people better, or oh, let's just make sure that people have access to food. Well, obviously, like we're doing research on hunger in the DMV area, and we're talking about addressing, this issue, and you're just saying, let's make sure that everybody has access or equal access to healthy food options. Duh. Like, oh God, duh, right? Like, that's not really helpful or realistic or applicable or something that we can really act on. Like, it's very surface level, it's very basic. We need real solutions with real action plans, with real steps and things that we can really actually do to address this issue. So that's one of the things as well with your research paper. You don't necessarily have to agree with it. You can read a research paper, and I'll be honest, I'm a sucker for critiques. I love when I have students who can think critically and be like, this is the research that we have, but is it good enough? Are they really doing what they should be doing as researchers? Are they actually making suggestions that are realistic and effective that real people and real communities can actually use and apply? So again, you could have a research paper that you choose and critique it and be like, no, their suggestions were some BS. No, their suggestions were really surface level and don't actually, apply or seem to be effective in terms of actually solving this issue, right? So you don't have to. I don't want you to just co-sign with the paper. Maybe you find a paper that you really agree with, that you can really vouch for, and maybe you find a paper that isn't that great, and you can make kind of suggestions based off of that in terms of what we need. So you can go either way with that. And again, I am a sucker for the critique type perspective, so you can keep that in mind. The second question, these two questions are the same but in different directions. I want you to address the micro macro link, right? So the micro macro link is how, um, you know, it's not psychology, so not necessarily individuals, but individuals together as a family or as a community can impact larger systemic issues, and how larger systemic issues kind of impact communities and families. So both directions, how do individuals and communities impact larger systemic issues, and how do these systemic issues impact smaller communities, social groups, whatever. So the first question is more so, how do systemic issues impact us as a community? Pick something to focus on. You can pick PG County, you can pick PGCC, you can pick like your specific neighborhood, whatever you want to do, but make sure that you focus in on one population. So for this one, I want you to kind of, quickly discuss the difference between a personal and a social problem. And I really want you to look at how structural and systemic issues and inequality impact, I know individuals, but I mean like how do systemic issues impact the community? And again, that could be PG County, that could be PGCC, that could be your neighborhood, that could be your family. But remember that we are in sociology, so we are talking, the smallest group is a dyad. Okay, so you could look at how this impacts marriages, how this impacts sibling relationships, right? But it needs to be at least two people for it to be sociological. If you're really just talking about one individual, we're getting into psychology, right? But so the first question, I mean, well, the second question is how do these systemic issues impact, how does it go from macro to micro? How do larger issues impact smaller communities and social groups? You can even look at demographics, race, class, gender, whatever. So how do these systemic issues impact people of color in PGC or women in PGC or young kids in PGCC or PGC? Like you can pick a demographic or a community, but make sure that that's defined and that you kind of focus on that consistently throughout your infographic and your write up. And then the last one is how can we impact larger systemic issues? So this one was more so like trickle down. How do systemic issues trickle down to smaller groups? This one's how do smaller groups trickle up to systemic issues, right? And so we can talk about like you know, let's say we're talking about like recycling, right? On an individual level, yeah, let's all try to recycle. Let's all try to recycle to make a difference. Because technically, I know it's like an individual action of recycling, but if we all recycle or put effort into recycling, we can make a change. Personally, I don't know that recycling is super effective just in terms of like I don't think most things that we recycle are actually recycled and we don't know where that goes and a lot of them still end up in dumps and a lot of people recycle incorrectly and recycle wrong things which might contaminate the larger recycling process, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm saying when I'm talking about like individual actions, tell me about how those individual actions like recycling or if we're going back to like hunger, right? You individually contributing to a food bank for your community, if you were to do that individually, and let's say you had like 6 extra cans of soup, that's not going to do much for your community. But if a lot of people in the community can donate cans of soup or corn or anything that's non-perishable, when we take those individual actions as a community, then it does make a difference. So I'm saying, like, how can we individually impact or make changes in these larger systemic issues? You can do things individually, but when we all as a community take those individual actions, when we come together, we can really make a difference. So that's more so what I'm talking about. Like, what are some things that we can do as individuals and as a community to impact or make a change in this larger systemic issue within our community? And again, that could be your neighborhood, PGCC, PGC, whatever. I want you to address like what are our individual and community responsibilities? Does individual responsibility matter? You can argue that. I don't care. But why can coming together as a community make a larger impact, right? Like individual actions are kind of iffy, but when we all kind of come together making those individual actions, it can be very powerful. But what are some things that, again, maybe we can come together as a community to do to make a larger impact? And so, of course, I want you to provide examples, suggestions, solutions that are realistic for whatever your population of focus is. You will then have to conduct 2 peer reviews. So this project is due on April 18th by 11:59 p.m. Your 2 peer reviews will be randomized on April 19th at noon. And again, that's just giving time for people who might submit it a tiny bit late because if you don't have it submitted by that time, you will not get peer reviews. So you're still going to get points docked for being late if you post it after this. But as long as you post it before noon, you can still be part of the peer review. So with that peer review, I think we've done this before in this class. I'm not sure. I think so. Maybe this is the shorter class, right? So maybe we haven't, but whatever. For my peer reviews, it's very simple. Again, they'll be automatically assigned, so make sure to check for that on April 19th afternoon to see your 2 peer reviews that are again randomly assigned. I don't do that. But it's really 4 sentences. What did you like? Give positive feedback to your classmate about what you liked about their infographic. Tell me something that you learned from that infographic. Make a suggestion, constructive criticism, right? Be kind, be respectful, but maybe you have like a suggestion or hey, here's another source that you could look at that is important in the issue that you are addressing. Or, hey, I heard about some local event that you could, maybe talk about that would address this. Or, hey, I don't want you to address like grammar and formatting and stuff like that. Like that's more so, I guess, my job. Like you're not a teacher, but more so like suggestions like, oh, you could also consider this, or this might be another solution, or this might be like another action plan that you could add to this. And then a question to promote critical thinking, right? So like something beyond, something that you're wondering about that maybe that person can answer that is whatever, more so like a discussion critical thinking question that hopefully the person who posted the infographic can then respond to and you can kind of engage in a discussion. So one sentence each. So overall, your peer review should be 4 sentences for 2 different students. You sometimes might be assigned to a project where someone did not actually submit anything. That happens sometimes where, again, it's randomized. So you might have, one peer review where someone submitted something, and you might have another peer review assigned to a student who didn't submit anything. If they didn't submit anything, you don't have to do the peer review, obviously. Just, common sense. You're not get docked for not doing a peer review for someone who didn't submit anything. I can't control that. It's randomized. Um, so here I provided some examples from past classes where I've done this with, but realistically, I did update the instructions for this based off of problems that I found. I've been teaching for like 4 or 5 years, but every semester I try to improve. I kind of look at where students are struggling or lacking. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to improve the instructions to be more clear for next time. Or I wanted to see this, but I didn't put that in the instructions, so I will this year. So these are decent examples of what students have done in the past, but I do have a few more details that I've added that are going to separate your project from these examples. This example is from the professor that I kind of stole this project from. I think it was Dr. Jaquan Epps. And so this is one that's like done by a professor, not me, but the professor who came up with this assignment. And so I think that this is a pretty ideal example. And you can see, for example, I do say up here, like, I want you to list your sources. You know how I was talking about like provide a hyperlink so you don't have long, don't be vulgar. So you don't have very long sources, but you can see how he did this here where he wrote his sources. But they were small. Like again, your links should not take up most of the infographic, right? They should be kind of small. They should be listed somewhere. They can be a hyperlink or they can be listed small like this in a corner. So this is something to base it off of, but I did have some other things that I kind of addressed, but you can see that there's kind of like a website linked here. You see that he has a couple statistics here, the overall kind of like findings, and then kind of like key sources of stress. I think what he didn't add here that I want to see is solutions and action steps and recommendations. So I do want to see that. And you can mess around with some of these other examples, but keep in mind that these examples are not necessarily what I'm looking for your class, but kind of a good basis if you want to see what other students have done. Oh, that was for my mom. Just kidding. Oh, that's also research for my mom. This is something done by a student, awareness of sex work among gay and bisexual men. She clearly wrote the research question, purpose of research, key findings, policy implications, her name in the class. I don't, I would want suggestions that these are well done. It's just that I have different directions and expectations now. This one was cool, drug addiction and immigrant paradox. Wrote the question, what is the immigrant paradox? We have, see, there's a clear statistic here. We have a number. I love that. More statistics. And then you can see here, and this is what I actually like, is, oh, my computer's not really letting me stop. Hide. Okay. But you can see her source. She didn't copy and paste the whole link. She just, see how she did it like as a hyperlink. So I can just click on this and open it. That's what I want in terms of that. Like I just don't want to see long, crazy links in your infographic because that's not aesthetic and it's not clear and it's stressful. This one was effects of physical and emotional child abuse. She kind of went through this here. And again, all of these are posted in the examples on your submission link. Post-traumatic stress disorder, what is it? How can we help people? I do like that she had, oh, that's not really how we, oh, how can someone develop PTSD? Okay, okay, okay. And then kind of going into statistics about how this impacts different demographics. So that's cool. Did we do this one already? Uh, this one's okay. I liked how it was organized, but like it's interesting because off the bat, I can't tell what this is about. You go into the questions and I can see it's about pornography, key findings, some stats, frequency, implication. But see how half of this infographic is the link? I Not that I would dock a lot of points for that, but like it's 2025. We can make a hyperlink. This could have been one quarter of this size and I could have just clicked on it. So I don't want to see most of your infographic being the citation. Because again, I want you to think about the fact that I am going to post these and hopefully you're proud of your work enough where you can post yours. Um, I think this one's clean. Facts about PTSD. You can see clear statistics here, symptoms, age groups, causes, and then treatments, right? How common, impact on life, daily challenges. I thought this was clean. I like this. I will say it makes me a little bit sad that these words are hanging out of the bubble, but that's just me being picky. That's just me being a perfectionist. But I do think this is like pretty cute and clear. And then we have another one on PTSD and racial and ethnic differences. I like how it's clear what we're working on, clear stats here, risk for trauma, seeking treatment. What I would have liked to see here is, hey, where in PGCC can we go if you do have PTSD? Like, do you have a phone number, like a help number, a crisis number? Is there a website where someone can go to get more information about this? Is there somewhere in PGC where people can actually go to get actual help regarding treatment for PTSD? So that's one of the main differences is that I do want to see that you have suggestions that are realistic and applicable and effective and usable for people in PGC. So again, I have examples, but none of them are exactly what I'm looking for because I've added a couple more details to what I want in terms of suggestions that are realistic and some action steps. And I want to see sources that are linked that people in PG can actually use. So a big thing that I have here is I don't want this to just be like a project for class. I want you to be proud of this. I want you to be like, wow, I actually just created a resource for people that they can use, that they can learn from, that they can get clear definitions and clear statistics and a clear way to either get help or provide help, right? So that could, again, if we're talking about hunger, where to get food, but where you can donate food. If we're talking about educational disparities, somewhere where you can get one-on-one tutoring, and then somewhere where people can volunteer to be the tutor, right? Think about it both ways. How can I help? And where can I get help? So I would like to see, again, some sort of link to the research that you based this on because, when I'm looking at an infographic, I want to be like, where did you get these numbers? So have that. So maybe there's three links, right? One is where did you get your research? The second one is how can you help? And then the last one, the third one should be where can you then receive help? Um, so whatever, I've made some changes to this project recently. It doesn't need to be perfect, but of course, as always, I'm looking for effort. I'm looking for college level work. I'm looking for what you say to be based in research and fact. I love numbers. I love to see statistics, trends, graphs, whatever, data. I think that's awesome. Um, and whatever, overall effort. Unfortunately, aesthetics do matter. I know that everyone's not an art major or artistic. I personally am not, but I still can pull together something that's simple, aesthetic, clean, organized. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but I want to see something clear and organized and something that people would, you could also think like easily readable. Like if you're scrolling through TikTok and the font is so tiny, like you have to actually like zoom into the Instagram picture, people are to skip by it, right? So really think about your own self using social media and what would be attractive to you and what you might actually stop and want to read and scroll through and being able to access certain links in an easy way where you can figure out how to help or how to get help. So I'm going to stop yapping because I feel like this is probably way too long. But again, I would just say like don't overthink it, follow the directions. I know there's a lot, but I was just kind of trying to give you pointers as to what to address. But as always for me, as long as I see that there's clear effort, that's backed by research, and you know that you put some time into it, then you know you're all good. And of course, peer reviews will be part of your grade as well. I will post a rubric, but it's going to largely be answering the questions and having a cute, clear, informed infographic. But as always, let me know if you have any questions. If you want to ever hop on a Zoom and kind of chat more, if you want more detail, or if you want to even show me what you have, and if you want any feedback on that, please email me. I'm always happy to hop on a Zoom at your convenience, and I'm always happy to kind of look at what you got going on and provide some feedback. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am sad that I don't get to know you all personally. So I would be so happy to hop on a Zoom with any of you. So just let me know. I'm here to help. I digress. I'm gonna let you all go. Enjoy your night and good luck. Not that you need it. I have faith in you all. You're all very bright, and I know that you're gonna nail this. So enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the rest of your week.